Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hello, this is Ray Gerard. Welcome to another edition of St. Paul's Letters to America. This is the program that asks, what if St. Paul were alive today? What if he were looking at what is happening in our country today? What if he were able to write a letter to us? What would he tell us? Well, here on this program, we give you precisely such a letter. We then utilize that letter for an in-depth discussion of an issue that is current in our society and our culture today. We look at it through the eyes of St. Paul. And as we do this, we always bear a motto in mind: love and kindness through the light of truth. Now today, our program is entitled Motherly Love Outlawed. The reason for this is a recent decision handed down by the Court of Protection in England, which ordered a mother to have an abortion, even though she didn't want it. That's right. There was an order by a court that a woman had to kill her unborn baby, even though she did not want to. Now, we need to quickly point out that the mother involved was someone who was suffering from a mental shortcoming. She, according to the experts, had the mental capability of a girl who's only 6 to 9 years old, even though her actual chronological age was 24 years. Still, she's not somebody that is some other people involved in there are a lot of court cases, for example, that remove life support from somebody who's in a coma, in a vegetative state, and can't express his or her wishes at all. This is not that type of a case. Even if someone is 6 to 9 years old, in terms of their mental capability, they still have mental capability. They still have feelings. They still have thoughts. They still have the ability to express those feelings and thoughts. And in this case, not only did the mother not want to abort the baby, but her mother, the would-be child's grandmother, also did not want to abort the baby and had offered to take care of the baby after it was born. That's right. There was a woman ready, willing, and able to take care of this baby after it was born. Why in the world would a court in those circumstances feel it was so necessary that they had to step in and order a compulsory abortion? What were they going to do? Tie the woman down, or probably just put her to sleep? Put her to sleep. And then what? When she wakes up, tell her, sorry, your baby's gone, your baby's dead? That's in effect what this court was requiring. A court. A judge, someone who is supposed to be looking out for the best interests of the people involved, ordering a child to be killed. Well, the letter that we have from St. Paul to hopefully give us some light with which we can consider this particular case is the following. Although our message has been insolently treated, as you know, by many in England as well as America, we draw courage through our God to speak to you the gospel of God with much struggle. Our exhortation is not from delusion or impure motives, nor is it worked over the centuries through deception, but as we were judged worthy of God to be entrusted with the gospel, that is how we speak, not as trying to please human beings, but rather God, who judges our hearts. Nor indeed did we ever appear with flattering speech, as you know, or with a pretext for greed, God is witness, as you know, or with Nor do we speak praise, or nor do we seek praise from human beings, either from you or from others, although we are able to impose our weight as apostles of Christ. Rather, we treat you gently, as a nursing mother cares for her children. With such affection for you, we are determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our very selves as well. So dearly beloved, have you become to us. From this message of St. Paul, there are two main things that he's talking about. One, he does talk very clearly about a mother's love. That a mother's love involves giving of oneself, sparing nothing for the care of the child. St. Paul uses the reference to a mother's love as something as trying to express the greatest love that he can think of, short of the love of God himself on earth. What greater love can one refer to than the love of a mother? And what else does he talk about? He's talking about the gospel of God, that he is giving to us something that he received from God himself. It's the good news. It's the story of the life of Christ, that God himself came to this world to be with us, and through the Eucharist stays with us, that God himself, the creator of the universe, the Word of God, Christ, the Word of God, the one who was there at the very time of creation, the one through whom all things hold together, as St. Paul says, the one in whom everything was made, the one who permeates everything, and without whom everything would fall apart. This supreme divine presence that exists in all of reality, that God came to us and offered himself to die for us. Such was his love. So really, St. Paul's talking about two forms of love, isn't he? And in the same passage, he puts these two forms of love together, a mother's love and this tremendous love that we have from God. Why do we use this letter? Why is it important for us to listen to this letter? Why, if we would listen to this letter, would it affect how we would view this court case? Well, we're going to get into precisely that. First, a little background on our judge. The judge that was involved in this case, and by the way, before we go further, we should perhaps give away the ending, just to give you a little solace. The end of the story does go well, because this decision from the Court of Protection was in fact overturned by the Court of Appeal. The abortion did not actually take place, but we'll get into that more as we go along. For right now, we do want to focus on the initial decision. Why was it necessary for a Court of Appeal to even get involved? Why was it necessary? Why did this judge at the first court, interestingly called the Court of Protection, that's almost seems like a misnomer in this case, but nevertheless, why did this judge rule as she did? Her job, her decision, as she said in her decision, was based on what she saw as the best interests of the mother. Now, we started with a letter from St. Paul talking about a mother's love. Why would a mother's love be so great? What kind of a love is this? You know, when a mother, after she gives birth, looks at the child, I don't know, I can only imagine what feelings, go through a person at that point. But it's got to be tremendous. It's got to be as much as any kind of human love we can imagine. And this judge decided that it would be in the best interest of this mother to deny her that, to tell her it would not be legal for her to experience that joy, that instead it would be in her best interests to, in fact, have to be told upon waking up from anesthesia, your baby's dead. The mother would have known that this was happening. This would have been a late-term abortion. When this decision was made, the woman was 22, going on 23 weeks pregnant, considered a late-term abortion. In the United Kingdom, abortions are not allowed after 24 weeks unless, in fact, there's a significant risk of permanent harm to the mother, whether it's physical or emotional. But for the most part, abortions are done before 24 weeks. They are much easier. There's a much lower standard to achieve the abortion. Two doctors have to certify that there would be some harm to the mother. Basically, if the mother says that she wants the abortion, as I understand it, abortions are pretty much allowed. And so this court was stepping in because the mother can't give her own legal consent. She's not considered competent. The court was stepping in to give her consent in place of the mother. The court was in effect charged with acting in place of the woman, trying to determine what the woman would say herself if she was in fact legally competent. And the court thought here she wouldn't want that joy of feeling the love for a child that she gave birth to. Here the court felt it would be much easier for this woman to go through a three-day abortion procedure. That's in fact, 22, 23-week pregnancy, that's in fact what would happen. This would be considered a late-term abortion, and it would actually take 3 days, 1 day of preparation, and then 2 days of an actual surgical procedure, both days the woman being put under a general anesthetic. So she would have known what was happening unless they would lie to her and not tell her. Either way, what kind of pain, what kind of trauma would the woman feel if she's told in advance that this is happening? What kind of pain, if you want the baby, would this woman feel? Even a 6 or 9 year old person is capable of feeling great love and great loss. But this judge, in this case, thought that feeling the loss from the death of the child would be easier on the mother. Why? Well, her reasoning was this. She was given evidence that the mother might not be able to keep the child, that after the child was born, because the mother is not mentally competent to take care of herself, that the authorities would rule that she's also not competent enough to keep a child. Now, her mother, the would-be child's grandmother, offered, as I said, to take care of the child. The would-be grandmother, is in fact caring for the disabled 24-year-old would-be mother. She's caring for them now. So she was offering to take care of the grandbaby as well. In other words, she was offering to take care of both. But the court thought that there was a chance that the authorities would rule that this would be too much for the grandmother to take care of two people, and that therefore there was a likelihood that this child will be taken away from both of them. And so that, she would be faced with the loss of losing the baby after the birth. And so losing the baby before it was even born, before the woman had a chance to form any real attachment with the child, that would be easier. Well, I have a question, which is simply this. How do you know that the grandmother couldn't take care of both? How do you know that the authorities would decide that way? Why couldn't it be possible for her to do that? And even if it wasn't, wouldn't the mother feel better knowing that she'd given birth to the child and that it was being adopted, or that some other somebody else was caring for it, other than to face the realization that even though she wanted it, and even though her mother offered to take care of both of them, that the courts made it so that the government, so that the people in power in the country in which you're living, made it a requirement that both you and your mother be denied, and that that child was dead on account of it. How would that possibly be easier? But that is what the judge thought. Now, perhaps it'd be helpful to understand who the judge is. Did the judge's own personal feelings perhaps enter into the case? There's good reason to think so. In 2005, this particular judge represented a group in the United Kingdom called the Family Planning Association. The Family Planning Association is a member of the International Planned Parenthood Federation. And in this particular case, there was a mother. Her name was Sue Axton. She was 51 years old, a divorced single mother. And she had a case before the courts involving parental consent, the need to give parental consent for an abortion to a child, her child, under the age of 16. Her child was under 16 and had gotten pregnant. And in the United Kingdom, there was a policy of confidentiality. The children under the age of 16 have a right to confidentiality. And so contraceptive devices apparently are able to be given out to these children without the parents knowing about it. And this particular mother felt that, in fact, this policy was responsible for her daughter getting pregnant, that it played a significant role in the daughter getting pregnant. The policies are justified on exactly the opposite basis. The health secretary insisted on the right of confidentiality for children under 16 because it was crucial in the battle to reduce teen pregnancies. Because they wouldn't, children might not want to talk to their parents about sex. So, this way they can get contraception without the parents knowing about it, and that this is all crucial. Well, how does that apply? Even if that's true, there's good reason to argue the exact opposite, that it makes having sex easier for children under the age of 16 because they don't have to face their parents about it. And why is it ever okay to get the parents out of the question? What about if they're loving parents? What about if they're good parents? You apply a one-size-fits-all rule to every case, and you may be doing harm. You may, in fact, be doing the reverse, making it easier for kids to get pregnant. But putting all that aside, even if what the Secretary of Health said is true, that it's good to help avoid teen pregnancies. What about after the person's already pregnant? How does this same rationale apply to abortions? Why would it be better for a child, a teenager, not to have to consult with their parents about an abortion? What if the parents offer to help the child, raise the baby? Then you could perhaps avoid an abortion. In any event, this judge, her name is Natalie Levin, represented the Family Planning Association and argued against parental consent for children under 16. She argued that parents are no longer necessarily the best people to advise a child on contraception, sexually transmitted infections, and abortions. And they have no right to know if their children under 16 is seeking treatment. She said they may be highly loving parents or may have extremely strict views on underage sex or extremely strict views on abortion. Extremely strict, obviously, meaning against abortion. an extreme position, but nevertheless. But even in perfectly loving families, she said, such factors might lead a child to feel she did not want to tell her parents in case family relationships were damaged. So here it's like she's arguing, this is almost a devious kind of argument. She's arguing, well, if the child, the 15, 14, 13-year-old, is loved, then it's equally important for that child not to have to tell the parents, because that might damage the loving relationship. What a kind of a reverse logic kind of thinking is involved in that. You just look for any way to justify cutting the parents out. Now, on the other hand, the attorney on the other side said, look, if parents are not the best people to advise their child, who is? It seems like a reasonable question. Who is? If Ms. Levine is correct that the parents are not the best and we need to cut them out, okay, who steps in? We can't just leave it and get rid of the parents. We have to, then go forward from there. So the attorney on the other side said, well, who is? The FPA, the the Family Planning Association, social workers? Are these people going to be better judges of what's, best for that particular individual child? It's still a child, under 16. It's a child. The fabric of society is being torn apart if we're separating children from their parents. And then we have social workers or people in abortion clinics taking their place. It's Orwellian. It's in effect the state coming in. How impersonal, how cold. These people who don't know the child, who haven't spent years with the child, these people are better able, in most cases. You may have a case where a parental situation is a bad one. Okay, granted. But we're talking about a general rule that applies in all cases. And we're going to take the parents out. This is what this judge, when she was an attorney, believed. Then later, in 2011, there's another case where she represented the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, the BPAS. That agency is the largest abortion provider in the United Kingdom. She was their attorney. And as lead counsel in this particular case, they brought an action to hopefully allow abortions to be done through the use of pills privately. Apparently, an abortion through taking a pill involved first one pill and then another pill. And the law in the United Kingdom is that it has to be done in a clinic under medical supervision, which seems reasonable. We don't allow people to take prescription drugs without a doctor overseeing the situation. Here you're talking about something that could have complications, could have significant complications. If you've just seen the movie Unplanned, you'll understand that. And she argued that the doctors did not have to be involved for the use of this second pill. Again, it's an aggressive position, an aggressive pro-abortion position. Then in 2017, another case, this one was brought at a time when Northern Ireland, had a law which made all abortions illegal, and someone who performed an illegal abortion could be penalized by life imprisonment. There may have been an exception in some cases, but for the most part, abortions were simply illegal. In any event, she argued in this case that law amounted to inhuman and degrading treatment by the state, that it was in effect, a violation of someone's human rights. Again, an aggressive pro-abortion position. That's what she argued. Now, after being elevated to the position of a judge, only 6 months after she was in the role of a judge, she is now deciding a case in which someone who wanted to have a baby came before her because some doctors had thought that it would be in the best interests, and against her legal guardian, which was her mother, these doctors sought to have a court rule instead that the pregnancy had to be terminated. And just 6 months on the bench, this woman with this background got this case, and perhaps not at all surprisingly, she ruled as she did. Well, a lot of people were very upset by that. Within a matter of days, within only about 4 days, 75,000 people had signed a petition objecting to this decision. It received a huge outcry. It's a very controversial decision. And in fact, as the Court of Appeal found, it was the wrong decision. But nevertheless, this woman with this background was in a position to give such an order. Now, the Catholic Church in the United Kingdom did have something to say about it. It was a bishop from I think it was Diocese of Westminster, Catholic Diocese of Westminster. Anyways, his statement was that forcing a woman to have an abortion against her will and that of her close family infringes her human rights, not to mention the rights of her unborn child. In a free society like ours, there is a delicate balance between the rights of the individual and the powers of the state. This case, for which all the information is not available, raises serious questions about the meaning of best interests. So his reaction was one where her rights were infringed, that there's a delicate balance, and that there was serious questions about best interests. Well, there is a woman by the name of Obianuju Ikioka, if I'm pronouncing that halfway correctly. She's from Nigeria, and she's a Catholic. And why might that matter? Well, because the woman involved in this case, the woman involved in this case is a Nigerian Catholic woman. Her mother is from Nigeria and Catholic. In any event, this opinion writer is also from Nigeria, same culture, same cultural background. And she writes, "We should be outraged that a government-affiliated health establishment is fighting to kill a developed baby against the wishes of her mother and grandmother. Outrage. The case exposes how far the tyranny of the abortion regime extends. In a society that has decided the unborn have no rights, the worth and life of the unborn are determined by the most powerful." As a Catholic Nigerian woman living in the United Kingdom, my heart is broken. She said that Catholic Nigerians are pro-life both because of our faith and because of our cultural heritage. Our people still hold firmly to the belief that human life is precious, even in the mother's womb. We believe that God owns life and that God gives life. These are deeply held beliefs that no judge or court should attempt to strip from our hearts and minds. I can't help but be affected by the difference in the tone of these two people. Our priests and our bishops they try to do the best job that they can. And they are mindful in many cases of the reception that they receive by society. However, this is an outrageous case. It calls for objections to be voiced in terms of outrage, to be voiced in terms of broken hearts, to be voiced in terms like God owns life, God gives life, and no judge has the right to step in. This judge did. Why is there such a difference between just a Catholic layperson and a leader, a bishop of the Catholic Church? It's there's no other way to put it, but it's disappointing. It really is. I mean, what are we talking about? We get caught up in, well, the doctors said this and the mother said that and the judge said this and this is what the law says. But what are we talking about? We are still talking about a life, a baby. In any event, this Catholic woman from Nigeria understands that. In Nigeria, abortions are unheard of, but in our sophisticated, advanced, culturally progressed Western civilization, we apparently know better. Now, while soon after this decision was made, an appeal was sought to the Court of Appeal. And while that appeal was pending, this woman went through, or while the appeal was scheduled to be argued, this woman went through that first of the 3-day abortion procedure. She was being prepared. Preparatory steps were being taken on that first day when this case was argued. This woman came so very close to having this abortion. The timing was scary. In any event, the Court of Appeal looked at this matter, and they had a few interesting things to say. They noted that, in fact, in Nigeria, abortions are unheard of. But a lot of the facts, the underlying facts of this case came out in this Court of Appeal decision. One was this, that the doctors who had approached the court for this permission to abort the baby were of the opinion that there were 2 psychiatrists and an obstetrician, by the way. There were 3 doctors involved who gave medical testimony in this case. And they basically, at least some of them, were of the opinion that the understanding of this would-be mother was simplistic. And they, in their opinion, suggested that she looked at the baby like a doll, like it was a toy doll, and that they could. It was actually suggested and stated to the court, the lower court, that what they would do is to minimize the potential impact after the abortion. They would give the child an actual baby doll. Now, isn't that just fine and dandy? We're going to replace a living baby with a doll, with a toy, and that's going to be enough to soothe and placate this mother after an abortion. Really? The woman I mentioned in that earlier case, I think it was Mary Saxon or Sue Saxon. Anyways, the woman whose case involved a child under 16 and her parental consent was not required. The reason why she felt so strongly about her own daughter's situation is that some 20 years earlier, she herself had had an abortion, and apparently it caused her years of grief and depression. People who promote abortion often minimize the effects that take place afterwards. They worry a lot about the psychological harm that could be done by raising the child. They look at, the psychological state of the person when they come in to ask for the abortion. And they make an assessment at that point. So, they're scared about raising the child. What about the psychological harm that can be done after the abortion? That's rarely talked about, but it can be devastating. And this particular woman knew it very well. And here in this case, this current case, the experts are saying that you can placate that grief with a toy doll. I mean, are you kidding me? Really? Is this really a serious? Are these mature people? These are experts. It's unimaginable. Why is it so hard to admit that there's a chance of serious long-term grief? Why? Why can't we be objective and fair-minded about it? It demands it. Certainly, if you're going to be fair, and if you're a judge deciding what is best for this mother, you have to consider that. In any event, that was really the suggestion. Now, beyond that, the court did acknowledge, Judge Levine did acknowledge that this was a serious intrusion under the applicable law. There's something known as Article 8 rights, which include the right to motherhood, and that ordering an abortion is a severe intrusion, and that only, compelling needs or interests would allow someone to step in and force someone to have an abortion. But all this discussion is all about the mother. What about the unborn child? What about the best interests of the unborn child? Well, the appeals court did consider that. And they said, and it was almost just a cursory discussion, the decision goes on for some 60 pages, but they devote only one sentence to the rights of the unborn child. And it simply is this: it is well established that the court does not take into account the interests of the fetus, but only those of the mother. Boom, bang. We move on to the rest of our 60 pages discussing everything else we discuss. It is well established we don't have to consider the rights of the fetus. 23-week-old baby. In the United Kingdom, depending if you're in a good facility, the chances of survival are 70%. If that baby was born at 23 weeks, forget going all the way to term. At that moment, instead of having the abortion, if you did a cesarean and took the baby out of the womb and just simply allowed it to live, there's a 70% chance it would survive. Now, it would need, treatment in a intensive care unit, a neonatal intensive care unit, and so forth. But that baby could live. I know. The first child my wife and I had was just about that age when she was born. And that was back in 1990, when medical technology was, much less capable than it is today, and she survived. But even though it is capable of surviving, it only gets one sentence in the appellate court decision. It is well established. We don't have to worry about it. Well, of course, it is so much easier to talk about everything else. It's like the elephant in the room. It's really the most important question here, is it not? We talk about the trauma to the mother, whether she's capable, which is going to be less traumatic to her, this type of a loss or that type of a loss, all about mother. The elephant in the room. We're talking about psychological trauma to the mother. We're talking about death to the fetus. fetus. We're talking about death to the child. One sentence. That's all it's worth. Let's see. What else is interesting in this appellate court decision? Well, let's see. The decision in the lower court talked about that the benefits. She did talk about Judge Levine did talk about the benefits of having the child born alive, and here's how she talked about it. The benefits are that of having her child born alive and the possibility of some, albeit limited, future contact. She may take joy from this. It is not possible to know. It is not possible to know. Well, if it's not possible to know, then we have to be seriously concerned about it. We have to wonder. We can't ignore it. We have to wonder, what that joy could be, and if taking that joy away would dramatically affect that particular person. As I said before, this woman, Mary Saxon, she suffered years of grief because the baby was lost. The joy is something else. It's impossible for us to know. We can't know, so we don't have to worry about it. Meanwhile, she talked about the prospect of losing the child if it was born, and then she'd have to, then it was taken away from her, put in foster care. That would be a tragedy. So that's a tragedy. But, the death, wow, the loss of that would be involved in that, it's not possible to know. Let's see. Yes. Well, the other thing is it was not only the mother that, not only the grandmother, would-be grandmother, that was in favor of the baby being born, but the social worker that cared for this woman also was in favor of that. Her own court-appointed attorney was in favor of that. The social worker knew this person well, would have spent a considerable amount of time with her. The would-be grandmother obviously knew this person well, spent years and years and years with her. And she was very concerned, very worried that, her daughter would be grief-stricken. Why not? Well, understandable. I mean, it doesn't take someone with years of experience with a particular individual to feel this way, but, you could guess this, but nevertheless. Anyways, now the court did say, the Court of Appeal did basically take the position that the lower court erred in one regard. They didn't properly consider, this Judge Levine didn't properly consider the views and opinions of the grandmother and the social worker. That by law she should have, and she did not. That oversight, the oversight was for this case being overturned. In any event, let's see. Also, the feelings of the mother. The lower court understood that she was obligated to consider the wishes of the mother, but the appeals court said, not only do wishes, but the wishes and feelings. And the lower court judge thought, well, her decision, her desires can't properly be expressed. She's not mentally competent. So we can't really take cognizance of what she would want. But the law is wishes and feelings, not just your decision, but your feelings. And certainly, with a 6 to 9 year old mental capacity, could have great feelings for a living child. It'd be like someone having a baby sister. And they would understand there's a huge difference between a living baby sister and a doll. even a doll that has recordings and, it goes, whatever, coochie coo or whatever, those are recordings. I mean, a living, breathing baby, I think a 9-year-old child would know the difference. In any event, let's see. The lower court said it is very difficult to predict. Yeah, we talked about the emotional and psychological from the termination. Well, we didn't talk about that. So it's not possible to really assess the joy that the mother would feel from the birth, and it's also very difficult to predict the psychological risks to the mother from the termination. Really, I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit now, that there could be huge grief that could last for a long time. But the lower court judge thought, well, it's difficult to predict. In other words, we don't have to think about it. One of the experts said that she might even forget quickly. Why not? Sure, she'll forget all about it. It's no big deal. She'll forget. No worries. Interesting. The lower court judge did say that there's a real danger in this case of everyone imposing their own moral or philosophical views on termination onto a woman who operates with a mental age of about 6 to 9 years old. So, in this calling, the Cal Black, the lower court judge is saying, well, there's a risk. I mean, we've got the grandmother, she's Catholic, she's against abortion, she's of the opinion that this should not take place. She's got a vested interest, so to speak. Then we've got the doctors and, perhaps they're pro-abortion. And so we've got these people with these and they've got their own ideas on whether or not abortion is a good or a bad thing. And there's a risk that could enter into this case. Really? Really? How ironic. Here we've got a judge with the background that we've talked about with this judge, not considering the trauma that could happen, the grief that could happen, if this woman wakes up from anesthesia and is told, sorry, your baby's dead. Obviously, they would say it different, but that would be the message. It's hard to predict that. So, we don't have to consider that. Really? This is... sometimes people give themselves away. It's almost like a Freudian slip when they argue, things like this. In any event, the lower court judge said, well, basically, if the termination was better, here's another reason why the termination was better, because, termination is a better word than abortion, I suppose. Termination would be better because, then it wouldn't be a real baby, which you probably would have touched. In contrast, the pregnancy, although real to her, does not have a baby physically before her. It was reported that this woman enjoyed being pregnant, that she liked the idea of being pregnant, that this was giving her some amount of happiness and joy. Even though she likes being pregnant, the baby's still inside. You can't see it. You can't pick it up. You can't touch it. It'd be a lot worse after the baby's born for her to be taken away by, child care services if it's determined that the mother and the grandmother aren't capable of taking care of the baby together. So, that loss would be much worse. So basically, what are we talking about? Get rid of it now before the mother can have any attachment to it. Oh, how convenient. Get rid of it now. Get rid of it quickly. Let's dispense with this. In any event, this was, as I said, what the appeal court decided was that, she didn't take into account, the lower court judge didn't take into account the feelings of the mother and the wishes that if the decision had taken that into account, well, then maybe the result would have been different. The court, however, reserved, this is the chilling aspect, the appeals court, however, reserved the ability of a court in another case with slightly different circumstances to, in fact, order a compulsory abortion against someone's wishes. Just not in this case. The judge simply, made a mistake in this case. Not here, but perhaps in the future. So this baby was saved, but it may be something that we cannot draw too much solace from. Something, like I said, worse might be coming in the future, a different case. Now, what's interesting is that a similar case did happen in the United States. It happened in Nevada in 2012. And there, the court said that, and again, the parents of the would-be mothers, of the grandparents, were in favor of the child being born. And the court said that the mother has the right to voice her desire about such a choice, and we responsible for her care have the obligation to listen and to give effect to her desires when appropriate. It is apparent that the risks to either Ms. Bauer or her fetus, Ms. Bauer being the mother, or her fetus, are not so overwhelming as to compel termination of her pregnancy. So here in Nevada, the court stopped short. The mother wanted to have the child. The court said the risks involved for this particular mother in having the child, this mentally deficient in some respect mother, the risks were not so overwhelming that the court had to order a compulsory abortion. The court would not go to that extreme step. But in England, a judge said otherwise. 3 judges on an appeal court overruled it, but at least one judge said otherwise. Troubling times. Abortion, when it began in 1973 in the U.S., was supposed to be rare and safe. Are we not going down a slippery slope? We are losing more and more respect for life. If the decisions and ideas like the ones being espoused by this judge in England are heard about, and they will be heard about, they'll spread. And other people will side with the judge that was overturned. We are at risk for more and more sliding down the slippery slope we're on. The words of St. Paul talk to us about motherly love. They talk to us about the gospel. They talk about the love of God. We would do well to listen to those. The judge in England thought that, the joy that you would get from motherly love, it's too hard to predict. No, it's not. Even with a 6 or 9-year-old, it's not. We have so much evidence. Everybody has a mother. Lots of people have brothers and sisters. It's not that hard to figure out. We say it's hard to predict because we don't want to think about this. We don't want to have to predict it. We don't want to have to face this. But St. Paul reminds us. St. Paul reminds us of a mother's love. The judge in England couldn't really bring herself to really think about it. If her job was to put herself in the shoes of that 24-year-old girl, and in those shoes, she wouldn't let herself think enough about the joy that could happen. Really, if it was your child, and there was the choice where, well, even if I might not be able to take care of that baby, and even if those around me couldn't take care of that baby so that I could spend time with it, and that baby had to go in foster care, wouldn't I rather want that child to live somewhere with somebody who would take care of it? Wouldn't you want that? Scary, very scary. But in Nigeria, it's unheard of. In St. Paul's day and age, you could talk about a mother's love, and there'd be no question about it. People would easily understand it. Now today, that is a question mark. But in any event, we hope that this has been somewhat interesting. It is always interesting to me to hear about cases like this where people are taking views and positions that you just wouldn't think they could. You just wouldn't think they could, and it is good for us to be aware of these things. And so we hope that this has been somewhat interesting. We hope you join us again. We thank you for listening. Until next time, God bless.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.